How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Ayin Hey, Daf 75 of Masechta Gittin. Friends, should I tell you something? You want me to tell you something? I'll tell you something. It's Friday. This week is going to be Tisha B'Av, like when I recorded in advance, right? So this week is going to be Tisha B'Av. Now Tisha B'Av, you can't learn. You can't record Babylon Talmud. You can't prepare Babylon Talmud. It makes it a shtickle difficult. So it's Friday before. This is my third daf that I'm recording today. Recording for Friday, for Shabbos, and for Tisha B'Av Betzim. So we're going to learn this. It's not a particularly difficult daf, but we're going to stop a little bit high up on daf Ayin Hey Amud Beis. But that means I suspect that daf Ayin Vav is going to be a doozy. I suspect that tomorrow's daf is going to be a doozy. Alright, let's go. Alright, we're going to start on daf Ayin Daled Amud Beis. On the first of the wide lines, Tanan Osam, we learned Darton in Arochin. Barishon Aya Nitman Yom Shneim Aser Chodesh Kadesh Yechalut Lo. This can Hillel Azokin Shei Cholish Es Ma'osav Lelishka V'Yeshover Es Adeles V'Nichnos V'Imosa Sheyirtza Halo Yover V'Yitel Es Ma'osav. Who can tell me what this is talking about? It's talking about Batei Ari Choma. Do you know what Batei Ari Choma is? Okay, so we learned the other day that about the Jubilee year, right? That if Shimon sells a property to Reuven, so comes the Jubilee year, comes Yovel, it reverts back to Shimon. Now, right, if Shimon sells a field to Reuven, it reverts back to Shimon. So now, but, there's an interesting halacha that when it comes to a house in a walled city, however, so the halacha is different. The halacha there is that if Shimon sells a house to Reuven in a walled city, so Reuven has Shimon sells a house to Reuven in a walled city. Shimon, who sold the house, has 1 year to buy it back from Reuven. He has 1 year to buy it back from Reuven. After that year, if Shimon does not buy it back from Reuven, it's Reuven's forever. Forever. So now Reuven, that whole year is shpilkus. That whole year, he's living in fear of that knock on the door from Shimon, says, I want to buy it back. Comes the last day of the year. You can imagine. What does Reuven do? He hides. He says, I'm telling you, I better not come today. It's the last day of the year. And he says, you know what? I'm just going to hide and he won't find me. And then Memele, it'll be mine. So Hillel had to make a takana to say, in order to prevent this situation, that Shimon, there was like a special room that Shimon can go on the last day and put the price, pay for the house, put it in the office, and then the house is Shimon's. He can go and knock down the door, and it's his. It goes back to him. Reuven, whenever he's ready, he can come and take the money from this office. But so in order to prevent Reuven from hiding and getting the house that way, so Hillel made a takane that Shimon can put the money in a certain room. So again, Tanan we learned in Arochin, but Rishona initially Nitman Yom Shneim Aser Chodesh. Reuven would hide on the last day of the year, so that Shimon won't be able to find him to buy back his house. Kadesh Yechalut Lo, so that the house Memele will be Reuven's forever. Hiskin Hillel Azokin. So to prevent this, Hillel Azokin made a takane. Shei Cholesh is Ma'osav Lelishka, that Shimon can put his money in this office in a particular place. V'yeshover Sadelis V'nichnos, and then the house goes back to him, and he can break down the door and it's his. V'yemosai Sheyirtze Alo Yovav Yitelas Ma'osav. Whenever Reuven's ready, he can come and take his money from this place. Omar Rav, says Rav, Mitakanoso Shel Hillel Azokin Nishma. Let's learn from the fact that Hillel Azokin had to make a takana in order to allow Shimon to buy back his house in this manner. Hareze Gittin. So it sounds like the halacha would be that if a fellow says to his wife, here is your get, under the condition that you give me 200 zuz. Vinosna lo midaito migoreshes. If she pays him So this is your get under the condition that you give me 200 zuz. If she pays him and he's willing to receive it, so then she's divorced. Al korcho eina megoreshes. But if he doesn't want to accept the 200 zuz, they're not divorced. From the fact that Hillel had to make a special takoneh in order to allow Shimon to pay Ruvain for his house against his will. Michlal, that implies the ba'alma that in general, otherwise, nisina bal korche lo yavi nisina. Giving against someone's will is not a good giving, and therefore we can learn that if a fellow says to his wife, "Here's your get under the condition that you give me 200 zuz," if he doesn't want to receive that 200 zuz, then it's kilu he doesn't receive it, and they're not divorced. Maskifler pape b'teimer of Shimon bar Ashi v'dilma. But one second, perhaps. Maybe the reason why Hillel needed to make such a takana was because Shimon is buying back his house not in the presence of Ruvain, obviously. Ruvain's hiding. So because Ruvain is not there and Shimon needs to somehow buy back his house and pay for it, that is why a takana was necessary by Hillel. Right? Because since Ruvain is hiding, Hillel needed to make a takana that Shimon can put his money in this room and it works. But asks Papa of Shimon bar Ashi that, but if Shimon would have given Ruvain, if he would have knocked on Ruvain's door and paid Ruvain for the house to get his house back, even if Ruvain didn't want to accept it, it would be an acceptance, and therefore, if she pays the husband the 200 zuz, even if he doesn't want to accept it, it's considered accepted. Vikadamri, those who say that the way the discussion between Rava and Rav Papa went the following way. Vikadamri, Amar Rava says, Rava, mitakanosu shel Hillel, from Hillel's takana, that he dafka had to make a takana where Ruvain was hiding. So hareze gitech amanashe titni li mosayim zuz, that if a fellow says to his wife, "You are divorced under the condition that you give me 200 zuz," and she gives him the 200 zuz, whether he wants to accept it or not, it's considered that he received it. Because after all, when Hillel needed to make a takana, that was only shelo b'fanav, only because Reuven was hiding. But if Reuven was there, so then Shimon can give him the money whether Reuven wants it or not. And therefore here as well, if the wife gives the husband the 200 zuz, whether he wants to receive it or not. Havi nisino. But wait, maybe even if if Reuven was there, it would be a problem, right? That Shimon would be unable to pay Reuven against his will, and also the wife would be unable to give the money to the husband against his will. So then, why did Hillel only make the takana by when Reuven's hiding? Right? So I feel before of Nami midaitu in al korcholov Hillel my deitztrich lay talking. The reason why Hillel only made the takana when Reuven's hiding is because that was the case that required the takana, because Reuven would go hiding. But technically speaking, Shimon also wouldn't be able to give it to Reuven in his face against his will. So that's Rav Papa's kasha. Okay, fine. Okay, so we had two ways of understanding. In the first part, Rava says that she cannot give the money to the husband. Rav Papa had a kasha. Then Rava says that she can give the money to the husband. Rav Papa oichid had a kasha. Okay, fine. All right. Amar Rabba Bar Bachana Reb Yochanan. Whenever we have Reb Shimon ben Gamliel in our Mishnayos, halacha kimoso, we paskin like him. Chutz me'or v'tzidon v'raya achrona, except for in three places. Very, very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. And I don't know, it sounds like this is sort of the accepted wisdom, that any place where we have Reb Shimon ben Gamliel in the Mishnayos, the halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. There are three exceptions. In the middle one, tzidon, is our case, right? When a fellow says that you're divorced on the condition that you give me back my cloak, and then the cloak gets lost, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, okay, just give him the money, give him the value. We don't pass like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel there. Tana Rabbanan, You hear this? A husband says to his wife, here's your get, but the paper is mine. The physical get is mine. What's he giving her? I don't know, the sentiment of the get. The sentiment of the divorce. The spirit of the divorce. So, so he can't just give the sentiment of the divorce. You have to give a physical document. And if he says, but I retain the document, then he's not giving anything to her. However, if what he says is, here's your get under the condition that you, at a later point, return to me the document, well then Migoresh, she is divorced. What's the difference between the Reisha and the Seifa? How come when he says, here's your get, but the physical document remains mine, it's no good? But if he says, here's your get, and then I want you to return it to me, it is a good divorce. What's the difference? Both times it seems like he's getting, he's keeping the document. So Rav Chizda, Hamani Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. It says Rav Chizda, well, this is Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Amar titen lo es damel. The Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, by the cloak, if the cloak gets lost, just give him the value. So Achanami Efsher the mefaise le bidmei. Here oichet. Maybe she can. He says, look, here's a get under the condition that you give me back the document. Maybe she can appease him, like, look, maybe I can just give you the value of it, and then she can keep her get and she'll remain divorced. Maskeflo Abai says, Rav Chizda, come on, I'm not okay with that. Look, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel was talking about a case where the cloak got lost. But if the cloak would still exist, would be right there, would he say that she can just give the value and the cloak is what he wants and it's right here? The document is still here. She can't just give him the value of it. So El Amar Abaye. So we have some interesting replies over here. El Amar Abaye rather says Abaye Hamani Reb Meir he that this brisa is Reb Meir. It's very interesting. Damar Ba'inon Tnai Kafel. V'hacha ki ha lo kafel Tnai. Very interesting. This must have come up before. I don't know, did it not? This must have come up before, no? Reb Meir's opinion on Tanai Kafel. What's Tanai Kafel? A Tanai Kafel is that when you make a condition, you have to give both sides. If you do this, then this. And if you don't do that, then something else, then a different outcome. You can't just say, right, like, so for example, in this case, he's saying, he says, here's your get, under the condition that you give me back the paper. He didn't say, and what happens if you don't give me back the paper? He didn't say, and if you don't give me back the paper, then we're not divorced. He didn't do that. It has to be a T'nai Kafel. You have to give both sides of the outcomes. If you do this, then that, and if you don't do this, then something else. So it's very interesting. We're going to see three answers now. And the idea in these three answers are to say that the reason why it's a kosher get is because the stipulation, the Tanai, is actually an invalid Tanai. So the Tanai is null, and what's left is the get. So the only reason why they're divorced is actually because of a technicality. Really, the Tanai, if it was stated correctly, would be problematic. That she has to give back the divorce, then how could she be divorced? That's a problematic thing, right? Here's your get under the condition that you give it back to me. That's problematic. At least that's the assumption for now. That's problematic. The only reason why it says they're divorced is because he made a faulty Tanai, and therefore the Tanai is thrown in the garbage, and he's basically just giving her a get. Okay? So Amar Abaye says, Abaye, Hamani Reb Meir, the reason why they're divorced is because this, when it comes to the conditions, right, well, this brisa is Reb Meir, the Amar who says, Ba'inan Tanai Kafel, that you need a double Tanai, right? If you give me back to the paper, we're divorced. If not, then we're not divorced. But here he didn't give both sides. He only said, you have to give me back the paper. He didn't say what happens if you don't. Which Rava says, so 1 second. Abaye, you're saying that the issue is that he didn't give both sides of the equation? But if he gave both sides of the equation, then it would have been a valid condition, a valid Tanai, and it wouldn't be an acceptable Tanai, because how can she be divorced if she has to give it back, and therefore they wouldn't be divorced. Meaning the only issue with this Tanai is that it wasn't double-sided. But one second, says Reb Meir, says Rav, Michte, Kol Tanai Meichel Gaminon, Lehu. Where do we learn out conditions from? Where do we learn out Tanais from? Mitnai Bnei Gad Uvnei Ruven. That when the sons of God and the sons of Ruven wanted to stay on the Eivra Yarden, on the other side of the Jordan, and not go into Eretz Yisrael, they wanted to stay on the other side of the Jordan, so they made a condition. So Moshe Rabbeinu made a condition with them. If you go into Eretz Yisrael and you fight, so then you'll be able to get Eivra Yarden. If you don't go into Eretz Yisrael and fight, then you won't get Eivra Yarden. And that's where, right, so that's where we learn out stipulations from, Tanaim from. And therefore, Reb Meir, who learns out that you need a double-sided Tanai, learns it from there. From that Tanai, Bnei Gad Bnei Ruven. Mahosom Tanai Kodim Lemaise. Av Kol Tanai Kodim Lemaise. And when it came to that Tanai of Bnei Gad Bnei Ruven, the condition came before the result. If you go and fight, which is the Tanai, right? What it's based upon, what it's the conditional statement. Computer programming. So if you fight, well then what you'll receive, the outcome you'll receive is Eivra Yarden. So the Tanai, the condition, needs to come first. To the exclusion of here, here it's the outcome that's coming before the condition. Here's your get, you will be divorced if you return to me the paper. If you return to me the paper is the condition. The outcome is that you'll be divorced. And here he's saying, Harei Gittin, you're divorced if you return the paper to me. That's backwards. So even if you give both sides, even if you would say, you're divorced if you give me back the paper, you're not divorced if you don't give me back the paper, that still would not work, even if you gave both sides, because it's backwards. You need to do the condition before the result. So, but over here, to exclusion of here, where the outcome is before the condition. So Rava says, therefore, the problem, right? The reason why, when he says, here's your get under the condition that you return it to me, she is divorced, is because the condition, right, the Tanai is actually an invalid Tanai, because the outcome is listed before the condition. Maskefla Ravada Bar Ahava has a problem with Rava. So the only issue is that the outcome was before the condition, but if the outcome was after the condition, then it would have been an acceptable Tanai, and because the basis for the Tanai, which is that she has to return the get, is problematic, then it would not be a kosher get. But Michte Kol Tanai Meicha Gamrinon, where do we learn out all Tanais from? Meicha Gamrinon Lu, Mitnai Bnei Gad Uvnei Ruven. Mahosam over there, Tanai B'davar Echad U'Maisa B'davar Acher. Over there, the condition and the outcome were by two different things. The condition was, you go and fight in Eretz Yisrael. The outcome is you get the opposite. You get Eivra Yarden, not Eretz Yisrael, the other side of the Jordan. So the condition and the result, the outcome, were on two different things. So every Tanai needs to be like that. Lafuki Echad, to the exclusion of here by the get. The Tanai U'Maisa B'davar Echad. That everything is regarding to the get, right? That the Tanai is if you return the get, then the outcome is that it will be a get. So everything is regarding the get, which is not a proper Tanai. Elo, Amar Ravada Bar Ahava, Mishum de Tanai U'Maisa B'davar Echad. Rather, says Ravada Bar Ahava, the problem with the condition is that the Tanai and the Maisa are the same thing. The condition and the outcome are with regard to the same thing, namely the get. So it's very interesting. The opinion of Abai and Rava and Ravada Bar Ahava are all based on the notion that the reason why it's a kosher divorce is because he made a mistake with his condition. He made the condition improperly, which basically canceled the condition. So if you cancel the condition, all you're left with is a get. So that's why she's divorced. But if he would have known what he was doing and made a proper condition, it would not have been a divorce. To which Rav Ashi says, actually, no, that's not the problem. The condition, if you can even say the condition is just fine. He did the condition properly. But if that's the case, then how could it be that he's saying, here's your get, under the condition that you give it back to me? How could that be a proper divorce? So, Rav Ashi Amar says, Rav Ashi, Hamani Rebbe this is the opinion of Rebbe, the Amar, Rav Huna Amar Rav, Kola Omer Al Manas, Amar Rebbe, Kola Omer Al Manas, That when you say almanas, so here's your get, almanas, under the condition that you return it to me, it's komer me'achshav dami, that you're divorced from now. So he's saying you're divorced from now, under the condition that you at some point later give it back to me, which is completely fine because matana almanas lahachzir shma matana. You can give something. You can give an Indian gift, right? You can give something with the expectation to get it back. So I'm not sure if that's. I'm probably not supposed to say that. I apologize. Probably should not have said that. Akoponim, that matana almanas lahachzir is called a matana. No. So therefore, he's giving the get under the condition that it should be given back to him, but it's me'achshav, so she's receiving it now, and then at some later point she's going to return it, and that's fine because you can give something under the condition to get it back. So now this is a funny little bit. Asking Shmuel made a takona begita the shchiv mira. When it comes to the get of a shchiv mira, that he has to say, im lo mati lo ye get, if I survive, if I don't die, so then it's not a get. The imati, and if I do die, yehe get, so then it will be a get. Because otherwise, if he doesn't do that, then what does Rashi say? It's because otherwise, the ilo kafle have a gita miyad. Otherwise, it would be a get right now. The koyin hu mafsla ole. And if he's a koyin, then his wife would be posel. She would be a grusha. She would be right. They would be able to get. She wouldn't be able to come back to him. So therefore, you have to have, in order for this to be a proper condition, he has to have both sides of it. Okay. So if I survive, it's not a get. If I live, then it is a get. What the opposite? If I survive and live are the same thing. If I survive, it's not a get. If I die, then it is a get. Fine. So again, so asking Shmuel, begita the shchiv mira, im lo mati lo ye get. If I don't die, if I survive, it's not a get. Im v'imati, and if I die, yehe get, it is a get. V'lema imati yehe get. Why don't you say kind of the positive first, right? If I die, then it is a get. V'im lo mati, and if I don't die, if I survive, lo yehe get, then it's not a get. Lo makim inish pronus lenafshe. A person doesn't want to, it's a little bit more, it's chaval to have to say, if I die, then it's not nice. So if I live, so then it's not a get. Then, okay, if I die, so then it is a get. Fine. You don't want to start out with the death. V'lema, and now ask the Gemara a separate question. V'lema lo yehe get im lo mati. Maybe start by saying, it shouldn't be a get if I don't die. It shouldn't be a get if I survive. Why are you saying, if I survive, it shouldn't be a get? Right? Okay. But tonight, kodem l'maisa, because as we said before, you need the condition before the outcome. So you have to be, if I survive, then it's not a get. Maskif lo, Rav asked the kasha, where do we learn out? Conditions from mitnai, bnei gad of bnei Ruvain, from bnei gad of bnei Ruvain, mahasim hein kodem l'lav. Over there, the positive is before the negative. If you go and fight, then you will get what you want in Eber Yardin, and then if you don't fight, you won't get it. So the positive outcome comes before the negative. So here also we should start with, if I do die, then it will be a get, as opposed to if I don't die, then it won't be a get. So Avkol Afuke to Lav Kodem Lehain, where over here it's problematic because he's saying if I survive, then it's not a get. How could that come first? That's the negative. We need to start with the positive. Elo Amarava. So Rava has a funny kind of formulation, which is, okay, start off with Imlo Mati Lo Ye Get. Start off with, if I don't die, if I survive, then it's not a get. Now, of course, you're supposed to start with the positive, and this is the negative, but we don't want to start, and the Gemara is going to explain this, but otherwise it's super confusing. We don't want to start with the negative, so we start with the positive, if I survive. But then we got to get lemaisa to the condition, which needs to be the positive outcome. I mean, in this case, receiving the get, which isn't exactly positive, but it's what will happen versus what won't happen. So, and then you start with imati, if I die, yehe get, then it will be a get. And then, im lo mati lo ye get, if I don't die, if I survive, then it won't be a get. Now, the Gemara explains it. Im lo mati lo ye get, he starts out by saying that if I survive, it's not a get. Lo mati minish prunus l'nafshi, because we don't want to start off by talking about what happens if he dies. We'd rather start out by talking about what happens if he survives. Now, for the condition, which you need the yes before the no, imati yehe get, if I die, it will be a get. Im lo mati lo ye get, if I survive, it won't be a get. But inan hein kodem l'lav, so that we can satisfy our need to have the positive formulation before the negative formulation. Friends, that was daf ayin hey of Masechta Gittin. I hope you enjoyed. Yeah, tomorrow I think is going to be a shtickle doozy, because I think I'll probably try and get to ideally I think I'll try to get to the 8th parak of Masechta Gittin tomorrow, but I think we're going to have to earn that daf. Friends, peace out.